All right, so really fast, we have a data set. We're going to find the mode, the mid-range, the range, the standard deviation using a rule of thumb, which means it's not the actual standard deviation, it's just an estimate. Okay, so the mode is the data that happens the most often, or the most common piece of data. So in this case, that was 13 because it's twice in our data set. The mid-range comes from adding the minimum and the maximum together and then dividing that by 2. So minimum was 1, maximum was 26. They add up to 27. We divide by 2, we get 13.5. Range, we just barely learned, is the difference between our maximum and minimum. So we're just going to go 26 minus 1 is 25. And then the standard deviation rule of thumb is just a way of finding a quick estimate of a standard deviation. This would not be an accurate representation for things you want to be really accurate with, but it can give you a general idea. So that would just be to take the range and divide by 4. So in this case, we have 25 divided by 4, so the standard deviation is approximately 6.25. All right, let's go ahead and calculate a standard deviation. We could use this data set, or we could do another data set that matches the video. What do you think? Do you want to do the actual standard deviation for the set we just saw? Would that be okay? Or do you want to even try it on your own for a second? Okay, so go ahead and use this data set and go through the process we just learned. See if you can find the calculated standard deviation. And then we're going to look at different technology options for finding standard deviation later if you want. Okay, we're going to take our list from the previous problem. We're going to calculate the standard deviation and see how close we were with our rule of thumb. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 4, 8, 12, 13, 13, 18, 21, and 26. So we're going to add those together, and we'll get 118. We're going to divide by the number of numbers, which is 10. So 11.8 is our mean. Okay, and then we're going to take our data points and subtract our mean. And then square them. I found it easiest if I just had it all in my calculator and did each one all at once. So then 2 minus 11.8 was negative 9.8 squared, which was 96.04. And then 4 minus 11.8 was negative 7.8 squared, which was 60.84. And then 8 minus 11.8 squared was 14.44. And then 12 minus 11.8 squared is 0.4. And then 13 minus 11.8 is 1.2 squared. And now it's 1.44. Well, guess what? There's 2 of those. So that was fast. And then 18 minus 11.8 was 6.2 squared, which was 38.44. And then 21 minus 11.8 is 9.2 squared, which is 84.64. And then 26 minus 11.8 is 14.2 squared, which is 201.64. And then I added those all together, and I got 615.6. So now there's 2 different ways to get the standard deviation for that, and from having done this on the calculator, I got some insight on the way the calculator tells us what we're working on. So I feel like they use S for the standard deviation when it's for a sample. So the sample would have been divided by 9, right? Or we use sigma for the entire population, which would be 615.6 divided by 10, square root of that. So I calculated this square root as 8.27. But the other one I didn't calculate yet. Let me do that. So it would be 61.56 and then square root that, right? So 7.84. Okay. The reason I decided to do both of those is then I used a calculator. So let's go through the calculator process. I can start over so you can see what I did. So everybody go to home. And then choose spreadsheet. The middle one with the grid. Okay, we were at home. And then we chose spreadsheet, which was the middle one with the grid, right? Then we're going to type in our data. Help me remember it. So 1, 2, 4. Somebody read it. Right? 8, 12, 13, 18, 21, 26. Now, just to make sure I got everything, do I have tiny pieces of data in my spreadsheet? Look at my row number. Good, great. So you want to make sure you take your cursor below that box. Don't leave the cursor on the 26. Go down to box 11. Okay? Now, when you're in box 11, you're going to go to menu, or you'll follow along so you don't miss anything. Menu. We're going to choose statistics. Yours is a touch screen like mine. And let's see. It's not pulling up statistics. There we go. And then we're going to do stat calculations. And we're going to do one variable statistics. We want one list. We're taking our list from column 1 and we're putting the answers in column A. Sorry. We're taking our data from column A and it's going to put our results for us in column B. As soon as we hit OK. Did everyone need help getting to this point? So statistics, stat calculations, one variable statistics. All right. So now in that spreadsheet, our data is on the left and the results are on the right. It started by showing me some of the last little things here, but look at how powerful this is for everything we've been doing. So X bar, what does X bar stand for? Mean, 11.8. This is a sigma with an X. That just means that's the sum of the numbers. That was 118. The sum of the numbers squared, I would guess, is 208. We don't really need that for anything, but there it is. XX is 8.27. Where have we seen that before? That was the standard deviation we got from the sample, from using the sample. Oh, I went way too far. Okay, going down further. So here we have our sigma x. And we get 7.8. What was that number? We just calculated it by hand. That was our standard deviation with the entire population. N, what is N? 10. We have 10 numbers. Min x. What is that giving us? The minimum value. What do you think cube 1 is? I didn't show you this last week, did I? Quartile 1. And then median. Come on. Quartile 3. Maximum. That one I think is the variance. Isn't that the number we had before we square rooted? Or before we divided and square rooted? Maybe that's not quite the variance because it's not divided.
It's not the sum of it.
It's just the sum of all of the squared numbers, right? So those are the details your calculator will give you just by typing in the list and hitting a few buttons. I think there's an online version of these calculators, and even if you can't find this specific one, I'm sure there's probably an online standard deviation calculator that I haven't researched myself. But why don't you do that for some of your homework, is to research an online standard deviation calculator and play with that, okay? All right, we are down to almost out of time, so we need to figure out what your assignment's going to be today. Do you have any questions on anything, any of this, these calculations?